Hello, everyone. We're just going to wait a few more minutes before getting started to see if allow other folks to have a chance to jump on. But welcome to the Energy Action Assessment BERDO Overview webinar. We'll get going in just a few more minutes. Thank you. Again, thank you for those tuning in now. We're just going to give it another minute or two, let a few more folks jump on, and then we'll get going. Okay, welcome. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on the Building Energy Reporting and Disclosure Ordinance, Energy Action and Assessment Requirement. I'm Ben Silverman. I'm the city's Climate and Buildings Program Manager with the City of Boston's Environment Department. And thank you for joining. So to give you just a quick rundown, I will present for about 20-ish minutes or so, give you a kind of a high-level overview of this requirement, what it means for Boston buildings, and how to go about complying. During which time, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to comment in the comment section. My colleague Stacia will be answering some of your questions live through the comments, but we will also be covering them audioly through at the end of this presentation. So with that, let's begin. So as for those who don't know, in 2013, the City of Boston enacted the Building and Energy Reporting Disclosure Ordinance, which we'll just call BERDO. BERDO, as many of you may know, requires larger buildings in Boston to report their annual energy and water usage to the city, which the city then makes that information publicly available for folks to work with. A further requirement of the ordinance, and this is what we're talking about today, is after 5 years, buildings covered by it must perform some form of energy assessment or action. The requirement is designed to really encourage buildings to actively work on reducing their greenhouse gas emissions and help cut their energy costs. And currently, this is probably the city's most far-reaching requirement relative to our carbon-free by 2050 climate goals. That the largest buildings in Boston constitute about 50% of our yearly greenhouse gas emissions, and greenhouse gas emissions reductions from them is very much necessary for us to achieve our goals. So what are the pathways? What is this requirement? There are three main pathways for complying with this requirement that all buildings covered by BERDO have to show after 5 years. You only have to complete one of the three pathways, so there's no doubling up, and there's a variety of variability within the pathways for folks to try and meet, but the main ones are the action pathway, which basically requires that buildings complete any number or any variety of energy efficiency or renewable energy projects that demonstrate a 15% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions or energy consumption over the prior 5 years. The second is the energy assessment, that if a building isn't able to have shown that kind of reduction, then they can do an energy assessment or audit by a qualified professional. These provide building owners a list of energy conservation measures, which will allow them to help achieve the goals of the 50% reduction for the next iteration of this requirement for the next 5-year cycle. And lastly, that those buildings that have already shown that they are highly efficient and that have been certified as such can essentially opt out from future iterations of the requirement if they maintain that certification. That this way that if a building is already highly efficient, and it can demonstrate as such, then there's no need for continuous improvement along those same lines. So that's the philosophy for the highly efficient pathway. Things to keep in mind that, again, buildings only need to complete one of the pathways. You don't have to do all three. You don't even have to do two. Just find a means to achieve one. That whichever pathway is chosen, you must be indicated to the city and provide supporting documentation, which we'll be going over by May 15th of the year in which your energy action assessment is required by. But because this is obviously a very large ask with a lot of moving parts, we do allow for a 6-month extension upon request. So the energy action assessment requirement is again due 5 years after a building is first covered by BERDO. So for buildings that were first covered by BERDO in the first year in 2014, that means that the due year for this energy action assessment requirement is in 2019. So this includes primarily all non-residential buildings, 50,000 square feet and larger. So to give an overview, May 15, 2019, that is 50,000 square feet or larger for non-residential, 50,000 square feet or 50 units larger for residential buildings by 2020. 2021 is non-residential buildings between 35,000 and 50,000 square feet. And 2022 is residential buildings 35,000 square feet or 35 units to 50,000 or 50 units. And this is just a quick overview kind of laying out how these cycles are meant to work. That BERDO was implemented through a series of stages like this, from going from largest non-residential buildings to smallest residential buildings, and the compliance cycle for the action assessment requirement follows that same pattern. One other things to note is that compliance with this requirement means that you also have been reporting your energy data regularly to BERDO, and then we have that on file. If anything has come up where you may have missed a year, or you believe that there might be some corrections needed to be made to the data quality, you can resubmit that data for past years, and we encourage you to do so, and we can help you out with that. There's some links in some of the documents we'll be showing later for you to do so. So to start off with the highly efficient pathway, there are largely three main-ish types of certification we are looking for that that buildings are deemed highly efficient and therefore exempt from the other requirements of this pathway. A building can be ENERGY STAR certified. What that means is that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency that runs ENERGY STAR Portfolio Manager, which you have been reporting through for BERDO, allows for buildings to become ENERGY STAR certified if they have an ENERGY STAR score of 75 or higher and get certified by some third-party engineer. We're looking for, and that's to be done each year. We're looking for buildings to show that they've been ENERGY STAR certified 3 out of the 5 prior years. But things to note is that ENERGY STAR certification is different from normal ENERGY STAR reporting. I know that the names kind of get confusing at times, that just reporting to BERDO doesn't mean that you're ENERGY STAR certified. It's an additional process you have to go through with the EPA in order to do so. Second is LEED. The U.S. Green Building Council has the LEED Green Building Certification System. It's kind of an industry standard, and the number of gradients in terms of green buildings within it. But we're looking for buildings that are LEED Silver or better, so LEED Silver, Gold, or Platinum, but also have 15 points in the energy and atmosphere rating category. So it's not merely that you are green building by the LEED criteria, it's that you're green building with a lot of points in energy efficiency, which is very important for the work we're trying to do here. Lastly, and this is probably the most flexible option, is the zero net energy or carbon certified. This is somewhat we're looking for any variety of different certifications, including just being certified zero net energy or carbon, E positive, or any other cases where a building can provide documentation that shows that either by energy production on site or energy purchasing of offsite renewables, that effectively the building does not release net carbon or net energy in the course of a year. But we don't imagine that there'll be many buildings taking this pathway, but we want to be very encouraging to those who intend to or can show that they're compliant with it. Things to keep in mind, that only specific building types can qualify for an ENERGY STAR score. Those that don't, and that can include I think universities are probably going to be one of the more common ones that don't necessarily get an ENERGY STAR score, that they can look to comply with this pathway through request of a variance. So we'll look that if a building is able to demonstrate that they are highly efficient within the sector by some other measure, then that could be a compliance pathway. So, this relates to the variance request form, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but to give a hint that the idea is we have these 3 main pathways for compliance that very clearly spelled out what we're looking for, but we do understand that there's a lot of variety and diversity in the Boston's building stock. So we want to be sure that we want to be flexible to ensure that buildings have a viable pathway to compliance that meets their specific needs while still also meeting the philosophy and general approach that this requirement is aiming for, of net emissions reductions in buildings in Boston's largest building stock. So the energy action pathway. This is something that we definitely want to be cities encouraging as much as possible. This is one of the more important aspects for the overall emissions reductions. But the general outline is that compliance with this pathway is that your building has seen a total reduction of either emissions or energy usage or their intensity of 15% or greater over the prior 5 years. It could also mean an improvement of the ENERGY STAR score that you receive of 15 points or more. that we are very open to any number and any different combination of energy conservation and sustainability measures that help you achieve that particular threshold. So that can include on-site renewable energy installation, any other energy efficiency measures, gaining efficiency benefits from connection to cogeneration facilities, off-site generated renewable electricity purchasing, including renewable energy credits, and also inclusion in institution master plans that have seen that overall reduction. So with that last one, what we're talking about is that if you're part of a building that is on a campus or otherwise part of a company's portfolio, and if there's a joint master plan for that portfolio, that portfolio as a whole has shown that 15% reduction goal, then that is a compliance pathway that we want to help encourage. So then lastly is the energy assessment pathway. So if your building doesn't meet those other requirements, then you can look at performing a basically an ASHRAE level 2 audit for 50,000 square foot and larger buildings, or a ASHRAE level 1 for those smaller. Something to note though is that while we call out ASHRAE level 2 energy audits as the primary energy assessment type that we want to see, we're open to any form of alternative energy audits or assessments that we have established a alternative audit request form for which you can fill out and put in a request that alternative energy assessment can also be included. Once approved by the city, or specifically the Air Pollution Control Commission, we also will make an ongoing and continuously updated list of all alternative energy assessments that have been approved by us. That right now we don't have any. People haven't submitted yet, but as those come in and folks we are very open to seeing those. Just to clarify that what we're looking for in terms of alternative energy assessments is that it's done by some form of energy professional that specialize in the building sciences, and that it provides to the owner and manager a list of energy conservation measures that with clear payback periods and energy savings. And if that type of assessment meets those types of criteria, then it will be approved. Lastly, just to reiterate, the energy assessment does need to be carried out by a trained professional. Primarily, we're looking for either ASHRAE trained or otherwise certified energy manager or auditor, as well as any number of professional engineers. Essentially, these are the general industry standards in this field, and should be familiar with many folk. Exemptions, primarily buildings that are exempt from the assessment are those that are being demolished, that have been vacant, or just those that shouldn't have been on the BERDO list to begin with. So if for whatever reason you've been reporting for BERDO, but you say your building's actually only 30,000 square feet or larger, technically you don't actually have to be covered. You've been doing so voluntarily, which so you are welcome to receive an exemption, and you're good to go. So if you think that any of those might be the case for you, please let us know. Extensions, if a building's going through any type of major financial problems, then we can provide a 1-year-long extension. Otherwise, any building for any reason can request a 6-month extension beyond the due date. This is just so that we can help folks. This is obviously a big ask, and we want to give people as much leeway and time as possible, but we do want to see that folks complying. And if that means waiting 6 months, fine, but the due date's going to come up eventually. Again, so actually, hang on, let me just drink some water. Thank you. So just to reiterate, our goal here is obviously to lower greenhouse gas emissions, but also to ensure that every building in Boston has a viable pathway for compliance with this requirement, that there's no, extraordinary circumstances that will prevent a building from complying in one way or the other without due work needed. And seeing as there's about 2,200 buildings in Boston that's covered by this requirement. They cover a huge diversity in usages, in ownership, in all number of different categories. We have set up a variance request form that will allow buildings who feel that they don't exactly meet the specific requirements laid out in this requirement, but do meets the general philosophy. So to rephrase that if, say, you are able to achieve energy efficiency and is otherwise, hello? Can you hear me? So, yeah. Okay. Sorry, my technical thing. So again, if you're building like that, you've done some good work, you're highly efficient relative to other buildings in your sector, and you can demonstrate that to us, and that, that's something we're open to seeing for variance requirements. Or if you have, done a significant amount of important energy efficiency work to your building, but don't exactly meet the 15% threshold, maybe you had 14.5 or something to that effect, then, that's something we're willing to look at, though, the key aspect here is, though, you have to be showing that you're meeting the general spirit and philosophy of what these requirements are going for. But again, we're open to a lot of variances on that. And yes, so let's just, before going to some Q&A, we're going to take a look at the main pages here. So if you go to the Boston BERDO page, I think that's it. Yep. No. If you go to the main Boston BERDO page, there's going to be any number of links to the energy action assessment page. Here you'll find just brief overviews of each of the three main compliance pathways as discussed, a link to the specific form that you will need to fill out in order to show your compliance right here. We'll go to it in a minute, as well as links to if you wish to resubmit data for prior years, here are the links to do so at. And then here are two main pieces of documentation, a energy action assessment how-to guide, which goes into a large amount of detail for this requirement, and then a 2-pager overview guidance, which just basically lays out in straightforward language what are the minimum requirements for this. Also, you can get access to the overview link, the due dates compliance list. This is a list of all of our known parcels and addresses for buildings that are covered by this requirement and by which year. Go to 2014, 2015. Everyone should have access to this. It is a publicly accessible Excel sheet, but just in case you don't, we've had 1 or 2 people who have had issues. Please let us know. And then you have access to the main BERDO Energy Action and Assessment form. So that's the if you go down. So it's this form. Also, this is the form for, where is it? Yeah. So the thing with the this compliance form is that you do need to have access to a Gmail or Google account to access. We are working with our City of Boston IT folks to try and come up with a different solution. But for now, this is really just the best way that we can collect all the needed documentation. You go to this form, you type in your basic information, name, numbers. Important things to include is things such as you do want to make sure that you have the address of the building, the parcel number. This is very important to have for us to ensure that all buildings are compliant. So please, and then the Energy Star Portfolio Manager ID they've been using in the past for complying with the regular BERDO reporting. After which point you choose your compliance pathway. So let's say I wish to do, well, let's say I want to do a, maybe just an energy action. So take us to this page. Let's say we've done some energy efficiency work. We've installed some solar, but we've also, bought a number of renewable energy credits. So I'm going to indicate that we've lowered our emissions by 15%. We did some energy efficiency projects, but we also purchased offsite renewables. This requires additional documentation. If you don't provide that, we will be following up with you just to make sure that it's covered. So scroll down. You scroll down, and for offsite renewable energy purchasing, we're looking for anything for basically proof of purchase. So here's just a renewable energy credit certificate found online for this building. Upload that. And then we indicate that we confirm that this information is accurate to the best of our knowledge. And at this point, you need to fill it out to confirm that a energy professional of some form has verified this data information, and then submit. So that should be relatively straightforward, but we understand that there's maybe some confusion on documentation at times for that. But any of that, we're more than willing to help walk you through and answer any additional questions you have. And yeah, I think that's good for now. I'm just going to keep this page up and see if there's any more questions. Okay, I'm indicated that right now there aren't any questions at this time. Let's just, but I'll give folks a few minutes who have any questions or concerns that they want to bring up, and we'll look through them. Oh, office hours, yes. And also as a reminder, we are available. Me and colleague here, Stacia, are available to help answer any questions. We've set aside office hours between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday as times where we can guarantee we're going to be around and can help walk you through this. But if you have a more pressing question, please feel free to shoot us an email at the address below, or frankly call anytime. But if folks want to call between 2 and 4, that would be great as well. So yeah, just give it another minute or two, see if anyone else wants to type in a question. If not, then that'd be good. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope this is somewhat helpful and just with folks reorienting around this. Thanks again for the folks at Greater Boston Real Estate Board for including these webinars in their most recent outreach email. And yeah, we have one more webinar on Thursday. If you think that any of your colleagues would want to be on that, that will just be basically covering the same subject matter, pretty much identical. We just want to make sure that as many people as possible has access to this. And after which point we'll be putting any of these recordings are online, and we'll be sending them out to people through the regular BERDO emails. But I think that's about it. Thank you again, and please feel free to reach out any time to if you have any questions about this requirement. Thank you again.